What is up, my dudes? It is Alec Lindstrom, former Boston College offensive lineman. You're listening to Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. Go Eagles and go ACC.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. Season previews roll on. This is the first one I've actually been on. Joey's been holding down the fort while things have been very busy on my end, but now I'm jumping into season previews to make sure Joey doesn't do all the work himself. I wanted to start by talking about my own school. David Cunningham, managing editor, Tech Sideline. He is back. David, you're basically a friend of the show at this point. This is your third or fourth time you've been on here. Welcome back.
I'm so happy to be back. Yeah, you texted me and you're like, you want to come on? It's like, yeah, no brainer. You know, you said hopefully one of these times Joey will be back on too. So I'm excited to talk to him again once soon. But yeah, happy to be back on, and thanks for having me. And we've got a lot to talk about.
We do. Virginia Tech's one of the big question marks in the ACC in 2025. I think a lot of people are wondering what this team is going to be. Coming off of a pretty disappointing 2024, felt like the team had momentum at the end of 23. 24, obviously, drones banged up all year. Defense kind of goes up and down again. Offensive line underperforms. We had multiple coaching staff changes that we're going to get into here. A lot of turnover on the roster as well, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And then, of course, on the offensive line. But then there are some returners here or there, most notably, of course, Kyron Drones at quarterback. So it's a real big question mark of a team heading into a really important year for Brent Pry, who really, up to this point, I think his tenure has kind of fallen short of expectations, at least coming off of a 2024 where it was the first year that Virginia Tech really had expectations, preseason expectations under Pry, and never really got off on the right foot in September last year, battled back, got to a bowl game. But I guess help me assess the temperature of the program. Obviously, you and I have a pretty good idea of where things stand, but just for the listeners, how important is this year for Brent Pry and his revamped coaching staff?
I don't know how else to put it except for crucial. I mean, this is everything for everybody in Blacksburg right now. It's the way I would put it is this: if you're involved in Virginia Tech athletics in any way, if you support any Virginia Tech athletics program, or if you have any ties to Virginia Tech at all, this is what you're going to be paying attention to, because there's so much that's riding on this. Football is the money driver, of course. The Hokies have not been great on the football field the last couple of years. You know, Brent Pry had a bad 2022, but he took over with a terrible roster. Got him back eventually in 2023 to 7 wins. Went down last year. This is a make or break year. And the other part of it is, looking 1,000-foot perspective, bigger picture, this is a make or break year for probably Whit Babcock, the athletic director. So this is much bigger picture than just the football program. We can dive into that a little bit more if you want, but it's more than just football in Blacksburg. This has ripple effects. And of course, who knows what happens with conference realignment and NIL, and you're in this new era where you've got a president of Virginia Tech that's been there over a decade. Same with Whit Babcock, the athletic director. They're the second longest Power 4 tenured AD president duo, only behind Kentucky. So it's like there might be change coming. And Tim Sands, the president, is currently the chair of the D1 board. So he's in a high position right now. I say all this to make the point that Virginia Tech, the administration, has good perspective of what's going on in college athletics right now, and has to win now. This football program has to win now. It starts on August 31st in Georgia against South Carolina in Atlanta. Vanderbilt the following week. This program has gotten off to a very slow start. Cannot happen this year under Brent Pry. You have to start fast. You got to get wins under your belt quick, or that seat which is warm, it's going to get real hot real quick, and not just for Pry, but for everybody involved in that program and people in the athletic department.
It's a lot of pressure. It's what you sign up for when you make all that money as the athletic director and head football coach, as one of the highest paid employees in the state of Virginia. Pretty important year. You mentioned the Whit Babcock point. You generally don't get to hire 2 football coaches if you're real serious about things. You definitely don't get to hire 3. Babcock, of course, was tasked very early in his tenure to try to replace Frank Beamer. He did with Justin Fuente. Things didn't work out. Then he replaced Fuente with Pry. Things so far are a little up and down, right? And like you mentioned, it'll be interesting because I think multiple heads are on the line here, right? It's not just Pry and his staff. It's Whit, because Whit is not going to willingly fire Brent Pry because it's really just another X, right, for him if he does that. He's got no real impetus to do so because it probably means he's out the door too. So really Pry's got to win for both of their sakes. I think that's just the bottom line at this point. One thing I want to mention here now, just talking kind of transitioning into the coaching staff a little bit, there are some significant changes, right? So this isn't, things have to come together quickly. Virginia Tech replaces an offensive line coach. Matt Moore, obviously, coming in from West Virginia. This seems like a significant hire to me. I think it's flying under the radar because Virginia Tech ended up replacing both coordinators. And of course, that's always going to steal the headlines. But I think what seems to me to be an upgrade at offensive line coach could end up being pretty significant. Virginia Tech also has Philip Montgomery as offensive coordinator because Tyler Bowen kind of left out of nowhere for the Ohio State offensive line job. And then Pry, of course, fired Chris Marr, defensive coordinator, brings in Sam Siefkis, who's a little unproven, but he's been coaching at the NFL level as an assistant. What do you make of all of these moves? I don't think any of them scream desperation in any way. Like, I think some of the Fuente hires towards the end of his tenure, it was like, okay, why is Virginia Tech doing like the Justin Hamilton thing? Everybody loves Justin Hamilton, great Hokie, but I think a question when he was hired was like, why is Fuente doing that when he's got a lot of pressure on him to win right now? He's hiring a first-time defensive coordinator. I don't see Sam Siefkis like that just because of his professional experience. Obviously, Philip Montgomery's been around the block. I think that's a good hire and one that, given the hand that Pry was dealt, probably a fairly decent hire. And then I think moving on and having Matt Moore come in as offensive line coach was certainly the right move. So what do you make of these 3 hires? Because I think all of them are kind of significant in their own way.
Yeah, well, I think the most important one of them all was what he did at strength and conditioning. Jarrett Ferguson is now the strength and conditioning coach. And this is a quote from defensive tackle Emmett Laws, who just finished his freshman season. He redshirted. He told my colleague Nick Brown earlier today at Virginia Tech's Media Day. This is on August 6th, FYI. He said he was asked what is so different about Jarrett Ferguson strength and conditioning, and he's like, we're in shape. Why? Because he ran us like MFers. Like, that's what he said, word for word. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Virginia Tech lost a lot of close games last year for a variety of reasons. Not being in the correct football shape was one of them. So Pry hired Jarrett Ferguson, a former walk-on fullback who played, who did everything in the weight room when he was a player. He's now strength and conditioning coach. I think that's the most important hire. But the 3 you talked about, I'll kind of just go bullet points for each of them. Matt Moore, offensive line, has been a train wreck. It's been so all over the place for the Hokies for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Brent Pry gets hired. He hires Joe Rudolph. Well, he just coached Notre Dame's offensive line to a national championship game appearance last year, right? He knows what he's doing, but he didn't mesh in Blacksburg. He stayed a year, then dipped. He didn't really recruit very well, or at least in his time there, he didn't recruit very well for the Hokies. And as a result, Tech's the room Ron Crook inherited was pretty jumbled. He didn't do a very good job coaching them for 2 years. Now you've got a new guy in Matt Moore. So there are a lot of offensive linemen in this program. Not many, because there aren't a ton who have stuck around the entire time. This is their third offensive line coach in a couple of years. But Matt Moore is a guy who comes from West Virginia. Obviously, there was a coaching change there. He has really, really good ties as a recruiter, especially to the DMV, particularly Maryland. And he's a great developmental coach. I think he's going to do wonders for that offensive line room. It's just a little bit of a matter of time, I believe, as far as Matt Moore and what he does. And you go to offensive coordinator. Philip Montgomery comes in. He is the offensive coordinator who coordinated RG3's, Robert Griffin III's Heisman campaign at Baylor, the quarterback's coach there. Okay, but you got to think, that was over a decade ago. So he's had pretty good offenses in the past, a lot of them a long time ago. He was at Baylor most recently at the FBS level, at Auburn most recently at the FBS level. Didn't necessarily go so hot. I think he's on the same page with Brent Pry. Biggest question, can he and Kyron Drones be on the same page? Can he scheme up stuff that fits Kyron Drones' strengths? That seemed a little bit difficult at times for Tyler Bowen, who, of course, left for the offensive line coach job at Ohio State. Then you turn the page to defensive coordinator. And I think this is where the biggest upgrade was for the Hokies. Chris Marv was somebody who he didn't really seem like he made in-game adjustments. He seemed like he either got the game plan right or wrong, more times wrong. Tyler Bowen was often the same way, but adjusted a little bit more, and I think more often than not got it right. Marv, I mean, you look at the Rutgers game from last year where the Scarlet Knights ran the same play over and over and over and over again, and the Hokies couldn't stop it. Simple adjustments there work. They bring in Sam Seifkes, a guy who kind of flew under the radar in this whole thing. That process dragged out for a very long time, and it happened before Tyler Bowen left. Seifkes is this guy who, former defensive coordinator at the Division III level at UW-Platteville. He worked his way up as a GA under a guy like Dave Aranda. He was defensive coordinator at Wofford, and then he's been in the NFL for the last couple of years. Vikings, Cardinals. He's got all these NFL coaches raving about him. And when you talk to him, you can just tell he's a very, very bright mind. They are going to be multiple in their defensive looks. So how does all this mesh together? Well, the OC and quarterback have to be on the same page. I think the offensive line is going to be better, but it's going to take some time to really get right. You're going to see steady improvement, I think, but I don't know how good they're actually going to be day one when they roll out there against South Carolina and pretty good defensive end on the other side. I believe Dylan Stewart. Then you look at defensive coordinator. I think that's, again, where the biggest upgrade is. One of the things we can get into, Sam Seifkes has talked a lot about situational football because that's something they preach so much in the NFL, and that's something Tech is going to be much better at, or hopes to be much better at, because Tech's put so much more time into. So on paper, a lot of upgrades across the board, and in strength and conditioning, Tech should be in better shape. But how does this all play out, right? You're coming off a season where you had, like you said, Mike, some of the most hype in a really long time around this program. You end up with about 13, 14, 15 guys on NFL rosters, half of whom were drafted, and yet you only won 6 games last year. You went 6-7. There's been a lot of talk this offseason, these last couple of weeks, about how there wasn't really a good culture. There wasn't a good camaraderie last year. A lot of guys playing for stats, playing for themselves, didn't really care about the team. Okay, so the culture might be better. I think Tech will be a better team, but I don't know if that will necessarily lead to better results. There is a lot of question marks across the board. I know I talked for a lot there, but there's a lot to get into, and it's very, very detailed, and you can go any which way. And we let off with this, how important is this year? It's crucial, and then you've got all these moving parts, and it's just like big task ahead, big task.
Just getting everybody on the same page, I think, is going to be so incredibly crucial. You mentioned the piece about just how important this year is just in general, right? And then how things have gone wrong in integrating all these moving pieces, multiple position coaches, strength and conditioning, which is a huge hire. I agree with Jared Ferguson, a Tech alum, huge hire. Will that pay dividends in the close games that Pry has not been able to win, that everybody loves floating around on social media, right? And it becomes a thing, right? It becomes a trend. And, will strength and conditioning end up, putting Virginia Tech in a better position late in games? Who knows? The one thing I'm curious about is, given all of the roster turnover, I mean, there's the coaching staff turnover, then there's the roster turnover piece, and it's basically an entirely new offensive line. It's a new running back room. It's a receiver room that has some guys that people are aware of that have been on the roster but haven't played in the roles that they're about to play in. And then there's Kyron Drones, right? And there's Benji Gosnell. It's like, okay, well, there's a couple guys that, there's Aiden Green, a few guys that have played a lot of snaps for Virginia Tech's offense. And that's a lot of new, plus a new OC. I know that spring camp was limited, and I know that they're just like fall camp has just begun. What is your sense of what this is going to look like offensively for Virginia Tech this year with Montgomery, and how is he going to work with Kyron Drones, who, by the way, he recruited? So he's familiar with drones.
Yeah, the biggest thing is how can you play to Drones' strengths now that he's back fully healthy, because he's a pretty good quarterback when he's healthy. We saw it at the end of the 2023 season. We saw it a bit for 2 or 3 game stretch last year, and then he got banged up, and then everything kind of went downhill. I think Virginia Tech has a very good, underrated running back room. There are 3 good running backs. Terrion Stewart, who came from Bowling Green, who's a bit of a bowling ball. Braden Bennett came from Coastal Carolina. Those 2 guys have numbers that speak for themselves. And then Marcellus Hawkins is a D2 transfer from Central Missouri, I believe. And those 3 guys, I think, will have quite the impact. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to look scheme-wise and what they're going to do, but you mentioned the wide receivers. It's a wide open competition. They brought in Donovan Green from Wake Forest. Really, really talented guy who's been banged up. This is his 7th season in college because he's been injured so many times. Aiden Green, a guy that Virginia Tech fans might know, he's going to be an electric guy for years to come, but is this his moment, his opportunity to really seize this moment? Does he take advantage of that? They've got guys like Cam Selden, came in, transferred from Tennessee, some highly rated recruits that it's their opportunity to step up. Keelan Adams, Chance Wiggins, Tucker Holloway's back, finally healthy. He'll be the punt returner. Takai Heath in the slot. You mentioned Benji Gosnell at tight end. He and Harrison St. Germain return there, and that's a pretty solid position for the Hokies. And then offensive line, from Pry and Kyron Drones both kind of called out. They're 5. That's kind of who it's going to be. You've got a redshirt freshman that's going to start at center, and Kyle Altuner. You've got some more experienced guys around him, particularly Tomas Remak, who will probably start at right tackle for the Hokies. Terrific guy, came from West Virginia. But there's a lot of question marks. How does Philip Montgomery work everything in? The biggest thing is everybody has to be on the same page. And I think if the Brent Pry era does not work out in Blacksburg, it will be, in my opinion, because he did not hire from day one guys who are on the same page with each other on a coaching staff.
Yep, agree.
Because some of these guys have been really good recruiters, and some of these guys you could say have been pretty good developers of talent. But there was a disconnect from day one with Tyler Bowen, a younger guy who was essentially telling older coaches, more experienced coaches who had been OCs before, what to do. He had never been an offensive coordinator. Same thing on the other side of the ball with Chris Marver, first-time defensive coordinator. I'm very intrigued when we get to see Philip Montgomery's offense for the first time in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium against South Carolina, what it looks like. I don't know. I mean, my guess is it will be very generic, kind of like what you see nowadays all across college football, right? Spread offense and whatnot. Bottom line is you got to get the ball in your best player's hands. And I think Tech has talent, particularly in the backfield. I think the offensive line will be okay. Wide receiver is a question mark. Guys have to step up there. Tight end, you're fine. But the bottom line is you've got to get the ball in your best player's hands. You got to let them go make plays. I'm more worried about the offense than I am the defense because I just don't know if they have enough talent. I don't know if they have enough guys that can go make plays. Last year, their wide receiver room was stacked, but guys didn't necessarily produce all the time. And a lot of those guys have gone on to the NFL and either got drafted or signed undrafted free agent deals. So I can't really give you a good explanation of what it might look like, that offense. All I know is that if the Hokies want to succeed, they're going to have to blend what Montgomery wants to do with how Drones plays best. Part of that's running him. Part of that's running some option. But part of that's also you got to throw the ball down the field some. You got to be vertical, and you've got some vertical threats. It's going to be super, super interesting to see how this all comes together. And one of the reasons why everything's been so quiet and locked down at Virginia Tech in fall camp, even in spring ball, is because they've got a little bit of an advantage on both sides of the ball if people don't know what to expect from them come week 1 against South Carolina. Shane Beamer is the one scouting them. If his staff doesn't know what to expect from the Hokies, that's a bit of an advantage on both sides. So we'll see what happens, the week 1 to week 2 difference once film's a little bit out. But I would expect them to air the ball out a little bit more maybe. But they've got some pretty good running backs. And it's a weird puzzle because the offensive coordinator switch happened so late that you didn't necessarily get a chance to recruit to the new coordinator, if that makes sense. So it's very, very complex.
Yeah, like you're preparing for Virginia Tech week 1. Like, what do you even do? You don't know who they're going to run out there at running back. You have no idea about half the receivers. Montgomery, what are you going to do? Look at Tulsa tape? Like when he was a head coach, you're going to look at Baylor tape from a decade ago? Like, what do you even do? And then on top of that, like the defensive side, which we'll get into in a few minutes, like there are just questions everywhere. Like Virginia Tech's replacing their entire secondary. Linebacker is, there are a few guys we know of that have played a lot of snaps that will probably be on the field a lot. Defensive line, they're replacing APR, and there are some pieces returning, obviously. But there are a lot of questions, like how do you even prepare? And I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of fans are really frustrated with the lack of, I guess, openness with the media with Pry in a really important year. They're like, hey, what the hell? Like, you've always been open with media and you've always been very transparent. Why are you not being transparent? I think you bring up a really good point that I hadn't even thought of. Like, nobody knows what this is going to look like. Nobody knows what the offensive line, how the offensive line is going to look. Nobody, you can look at tape all you want, but the personnel is different. The offensive scheme, Montgomery hasn't been OC at the FBS level in a while. Like Sam Siefkas has never coached as a defensive coordinator at this level. Like there are questions everywhere you talk about questions for Virginia Tech. It's questions for the opponent too, to your point.
It's the element of surprise, and for better or for worse, who knows how this is going to go. It could go really well. It could go really poorly, but I think if you're Virginia Tech, you're doing the right thing, in my opinion. It's very frustrating considering I work for a media entity that it's my job to cover this program on an everyday basis. It's frustrating to not quite know what's going on, but we'll find out sooner rather than later. We'll find out. We'll know exactly. I think you 2 or 3 drives into that South Carolina game in Atlanta, and you'll have a really good sense of who Virginia Tech is, whether or not those are scoring drives or not. You'll kind of know what Tech is trying to do, but it's those wrinkles. One of the things I thought Tyler Bowen always did well as offensive coordinator is he threw in wrinkles here or there. You kind of always knew there was going to be a reverse coming. Hokies did a really good job of getting Jalen Lane the ball in that position. And I look at this and go, if you're Phil Montgomery, how can you scheme up stuff that's going to work but that people aren't going to expect? And you've got all fall camp to work on that. And that's
Yeah.
the exciting part. If you're the Hokies right now, is you can do whatever you want, and nobody's going to see it coming. Now, that doesn't mean it'll necessarily go well when it gets out on the field, but that element of surprise is something.
Defensively, speaking of element of surprise, defensively, I just fill me in, because I mean I look at this roster, right, and you replace APR up front, the entire secondary is gone. Like Delane's gone, Strong's gone, Jalen Jones is gone. Like the entire secondary is gone, right? Like you're replacing everybody. There's transfers coming in. There are some names that we're with Dante Lovett we're aware of, but there are some guys in the secondary in particular that are coming in as transfers that have played meaningful snaps elsewhere. And how are they going to fit into this defense? And what is this defense going to look like? Because all we've heard is, oh, we're gonna be multiple. Okay. What is that going to look like? Do you even know? Because I don't. I'm trying to figure that out myself.
I don't know for sure, but I have a better, after watching a little bit of practice, I have a better sense of it. My guess it will be kind of like a 4-2-5 base formation. But what I think is going to be super intriguing is I think there's a really good chance Virginia Tech runs different, kind of runs like the same base formation, but has packages where, for example, you have two traditional ends in there, on the defensive line around two defensive tackles in a 4-2-5. And then say you're in a certain situation where you bring in two more like outside linebackers or edge rushers, more athletic guys. You're still showing the same look, but you've got different personnel in there. That's kind of my guess on how it's going to look. Sam Seifkes comes from, as I mentioned before, so many different backgrounds. He comes from the NFL, where they have preached situational football, but they've also preached being multiple. You have to be versatile. You have to be dynamic. And I would not be surprised if we see 4-3, 3-4, 4-2-5. I think 4-2-5 would probably be Tech's base. I think Tech's going to use the nickel a lot. My guess is we'll see a bunch of 3 high safety formations, because Tech recruited 4 or 5 transportal safeties. And when you talk about this overhaul, I'm kind of excited about this defense because there's a lot of talent here. Not really sure how it's all going to fit together, but there's a lot of talent. Like, we talked with J.C. Price, the defensive line coach, the other day, and you just go down the list of guys he's got in that room, and I'm going to read off the roster. Kelvin Gilliam, he's back. He's going to start at defensive tackle, and he's a guy who transferred in from Oklahoma, was kind of that third option last year, but started some games. He's kind of your lunch pail guy, your vocal leader on that defensive line. Kamari Copeland's finally back and healthy. He's going to play alongside him. But at tackle, you've also got they also brought in Elijah Fall. I probably butchered that name, but he came from Georgia Southern, I believe. Emmanuel Hickman, who came from USF. Cody Heisman, who came from North Dakota State. Arius Nash, who came from Mercer. You've got Emmett Laws, who's been in the program. He's a redshirt freshman. He's highly touted. They've got bodies. And J.C. Price talked to us the other day about, like, this group is going to be deep up front. At end, too, where they've got Keyshawn Burgos. Ben Bell came from Texas State, and he's a guy who kind of sat out a little bit last year, redshirted because he wanted to go play at a big school for his final year of college. He's healthy. He's a guy who I think is going to cause some ruckus out on the edge. James Joncom. There are so many different types of guys. I'm very, very intrigued to see how it all mixes together, because there are only so many of them that could be on the field. But I think they've put together, J.C. Price has to get a lot of credit because they put together a really good defensive line room. You mentioned linebacker. Caleb Woodson is kind of the go-to name. He's a guy who Brent Price said he has arguably the best motor on the team, and he started for the first time last year. I think he's Virginia Tech's linebacker for years to come. I say that he's a junior, but he'll be a 3-year starter for the Hokies. He's very, very solid player. You've got Jaden Keller alongside him. My biggest question is on the defense, maybe of all, is this the year that Jaden Keller, it finally clicks for him? And we had a long conversation in Charlotte a couple weeks ago at ACC football kickoff media days where he talked to me about how Sam Seifkes has basically grown his Keller's football IQ, and he's understanding the game a lot better. And it's not just, hey, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not just, hey, we're running this because this is what we're running. It's, this is the situation we're in. Here's why we're running it. Here's why it makes sense. This is what we're expecting them to do. And Keller, the way he portrayed it is basically, man, it's all coming together so much easier for me now. And he's a guy who's been around for 4 or 5 years. He's a redshirt senior. But Tech brought in 2 other linebackers in Tuan Santiago and Michael Short too. How do those guys factor in? Cornerback, kind of a 4 deep there. Dante Lovett, Caleb Brown, a Hawaii transfer, Isaiah Brown Murray, ECU transfer. Those 2 guys are very experienced, and IBM is going to be that nickelback for Tech, and I think he'll be on the field a lot. And Thomas Williams is that other guy. I think you'll see a lot of Lovett, Thomas Williams with IBM as that nickelback. And then at
what a badass name! I
IBM,
IBM, dude. That's awesome.
It's a ridiculous nickname. It's just like there.
Yeah.
And then at safety, Quentin Reddish is back. You brought in Sherrod Koval, Christian Evans, Tyson Flowers, and Isaiah Cash. You brought in 4 other safeties. All 5 of those guys are going to play. Reddish is the returner. He just finished his freshman year. I think all those guys provide something different. Tyson Flowers is probably the most well-rounded guy of them. So, again, a lot long-winded. I tried to be a little bit bullet-pointed with some of that, but there's a lot that Sam Seifkes can do. Linebacker is the biggest question, in my opinion, because Virginia Tech is pretty young, but brought in some experience at corner. Tech has a lot of depth and a lot of different types of guys, skill sets at safety. And they're set on the defensive line. But Tech's linebackers struggled for the last couple of years. Yeah. Part of that was due to Chris Marv, the defensive coordinator. I don't think he was a very good linebackers coach. Xavier Adebe, who played linebacker and was a terrific linebacker for the Hokies.
Does Pry know who he is, by the way?
Yeah. So, but Mike and I spent a minute talking about this before we came on because Virginia Tech Twitter was up in shambles that Brent Price said, I didn't know who Xavier Adebe was. The context was he was trying to decide if he wanted to promote Xavier Adebe to be the full-time inside linebackers coach and wasn't sure, and asked Bud Foster what he thought and others if they thought Xavier Adebe was fit for the role. Not that he did not know who Xavier Adebe was as a person or a player. Anyway, Xavier Adebe, Pry gave him high praise actually earlier today and talked about how he needed to grow a little bit. And that's where that quote came from. But does the linebacker play improve? That's the number one question I have defensively. If Tech can figure that out, I would not be surprised if this is a top 25, top 30 defense for the Hokies. I think maybe that's me being optimistic, but I genuinely think Sam Seifkes is a very intelligent mind, very high IQ guy. And I think the way he at least appears with his background is going to be able to mix stuff together. I think if everybody's on the same page, if they get the linebackers down, I feel like there's enough talent there to execute what he wants to do. So I'm very, very excited to see this defense because I think Tech's got so much talent across the board. It's more just a matter of who's going to be on the field and what are they going to be doing.
The linebacker piece is interesting because I think if the average Tech fan looked at the defense, they're like, oh, Caleb Woodson, Jaden Keller, 2 guys I know. Okay, I feel okay about linebacker. It's like, we feel better about the positions where we brought in 1 million transfers and we feel like we have depth, which is understandable. And the linebackers, to your point, have really struggled. And I think one of the things that'll tell the tale of Virginia Tech season is how those linebackers perform. To your point, Virginia Tech, like first couple seasons of Pry in particular, up until like the middle of year 2, they were getting gashed right up the middle of the defense, right? And year 1, you chalk it up to, okay, major talent deficiency on the roster, period. Not just the defense, just the roster. Year 2, it was like, oh my God, now we got returning production, guys who have played a lot of snaps, and this is still happening. Then they kind of shorted up back half of year 2, right? And last year, it was just kind of up and down again. I think linebacker is going to be really, really important. And I'm with you. I think that a big reason why Chris Marv lost his job wasn't because of his ability or lack thereof to coordinate a defense. I think it was his ability or lack thereof to coach linebackers. I think that's what actually got him fired. The linebacker play really has been atrocious for Virginia Tech in Pry's tenure, which is really disappointing considering the types of defenses that he coordinated at Penn State.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I feel good about Caleb Woodson. I mean, Caleb Woodson's a guy who has gotten a lot of hype, and he's been pretty solid. But it's really Keller.
Yeah.
And he's a very likable guy and very easy to root for. And I've had a lot of great conversations with him. And he's a guy who every single coach, man, they love raving about him. Like Justin Fuente raved about Jaden Keller.
Yeah.
Brent Price raved about Jaden Keller. And it's just like he's just missed a piece. And if he can kind of put it all together, man, who knows? But there's just again, on both sides of the ball, there's a lot of unknown. I feel better about the defense because I feel like, and let me know if this makes sense, I feel like the defense is less reliant on one person.
Yeah.
Where like the offense, it's like you have to go through Kyron Drone's strengths and weaknesses. Defensively, it's like you can roll whoever you want out there on that field as long as it matches what you want to do. That's the right personnel. And I think Tech is set up for success. I mean, safety was arguably Tech's second worst position last year.
Yeah.
Tech went out and, just brought in 4 transfer safeties who are all pretty talented. Tech, lose 2 really, really good cornerbacks, Dorian Strong, who's with the Bills, and Mansour Delane, he transferred to LSU. Young guys an opportunity to step up. And that's what you're going to see, I think, across the board. A guy like Dante Lovett, a name that people know, whether it's from social media or whether it's from him making some good plays in certain moments here and there where he was spelling guys. It's time for those guys, the Dante Lovetts, the Aiden Greens, to shine. This is year 4 of Brent Pry of the era. You have to win with the guys you recruited now, right?
Yep.
22, 23, 24. Okay, you're taking over. You're trying to get those guys in. You're recruiting them now. You're trying to develop them. Okay, you've got your guys now. Time to go win. And if you can't win, well, there's going to have to be some tough conversations that have to be had.
Yeah, and not to turn into a recruiting podcast, but like I think a lot was made when Pry was hired about the relationships in Virginia, and I think they're way better now. I think he's done a great job in the high schools in Virginia and state, but we're to the point now where like you're in year 4 and you kind of have to win in order to recruit, right? I mean, it's a different era now, revenue sharing, NIL, everything. It's just the sport is so different, and recruiting is taken kind of a life of its own at this point. But for Virginia Tech to win the recruits they want to win in Virginia, they have to start winning games on the field. Because like you mentioned, it's year 4. It's his guys now. It's all those guys that he put such an importance and emphasis on recruiting in the footprint, right? That's the quote he always talks about. We're going to recruit our footprint. Well, now you got to win with the guys that you've gotten out at the footprint, right? Out of Virginia and Maryland and Carolina and anywhere within like a 6-hour driving radius or whatever it is. Like you have to do that now. And I think a lot of people are a little bit disappointed so far with the state of next year's recruiting class. And I think that's justified, but also like you got to win games. There's questions here about the tenure and whether or not he's going to be the guy. Is this a lame duck situation? If it goes a particular way, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've hinted at that throughout this show so far. I think it's pretty apparent. Like, if he doesn't win this year, he's gone. Babcock's gone. It's like a clean house situation, likely in Blacksburg. So the last thing Virginia Tech wants to do right now is pay a buyout when you're just starting to pay players. Like, that's the last thing they want to do. And I've tried to hammer this point home on this show and my own Tech podcast. Like, the last thing that these athletic departments want to do is pay huge buyouts. Like, you saw it with Billy Napier last year at Florida. Like, he kind of survived. He weathered the storm, and they let Lagway play a little bit, and all of a sudden they found something, and now he's fine. Everything's fine, right? But everybody was calling for his head. I had pre-written a story for Sports Illustrated about Billy Napier getting fired. We thought he was getting fired in like the third week of September last year. And they kind of like, it was all sides were pointing in that direction before the bye week. We had the story written, and then it never hit publish, and he figured it out. And these schools do not want to pay these buyouts, man. They do not. Like, I think the best case scenario for everybody here, whether you like Pry or not, as a fan of the program, I think everybody likes Pry as a person. There aren't a lot of people who don't like Pry the person. But whether or not you think he's the guy as the football coach, you better hope it works out with the era that we're in, because I think a lot's been made about Virginia Tech and how they're falling behind and, you know, haven't really been a true winner in a decade, right? A consistent winner in over a decade now, and how Virginia Tech's fallen, you know, further and further behind. We got conference realignment coming up. There's all this stuff, and it's just noise. Like, if Pry goes out and wins like 8 games this year, he'll be back in the good graces of the fan base. I think 8-4, everybody would be happy. I think 7-5, you're like, I don't know, but I don't know if 7-5 gets him fired, David.
No, I don't think I can see a world where he wins 7 games in the regular season and gets fired. I can't see that, especially because it'd be a little bit of improvement off last year. Obviously, last year was, you know, regression from the year prior. Yeah, it's the interesting part. The interesting dynamic of this whole thing is the AD situation.
Yeah,
like I mentioned before, because if you get into a spot where it's obvious that this football program is not going well, you're going to have to make changes. The first thing you got to do is you got to change the athletic director, because that athletic director is not hiring another football coach. Right. So how do you do that? Well, that means you've got to fire your AD, hire a new AD, and give that AD time to hire a new football coach. And there's no guarantee they'll have enough time to do that in the proper window, considering the transfer portal and whatnot these days. So, like, there could be a situation, I'm throwing it out there, hypothetical, where Tech makes an athletic director change this fall, and is stuck with Pry for another season,
right,
under a new athletic director who evaluates the whole thing. I don't know, but it's so complex. And you talk about buyouts. I would say the only thing worse than having to pay a buyout, buy out an entire coaching staff, is buying an entire coaching staff and an athletic director.
Yeah.
And the tough part is, I think Virginia Tech as an athletic department is so set up for success in this new era. With Babcock and Tim Sands, the president, have done everything right to put the Hokies across all sports in the right position to succeed in the new era of revenue sharing. But it doesn't matter if you don't win football games.
Yeah, it does not matter. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. And so that's going to be the tough part. I think the worst thing that could happen is that Virginia Tech goes 6-6 again.
Yeah. Leave the ambiguity, right? Like, as you and I, this is something that we do. Like, you do this, full time covering Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
I the best thing for content at SI is for there to be ambiguity and like debate and people not really knowing. And man, business would be booming if Virginia Tech goes 6. The message boards, David, would be booming because nobody would really know.
Well, yes, it's good in that regard, but it also sucks because everybody just wants something to happen, good or bad.
Good or bad, right?
Like I'll say this, like I'd rather win 8 games or 4 games, be on one side or the other, because something's happening.
Right.
Like, and this is a big year in terms of like in terms of a contract year for Pry.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's only got 2 or 3 years remaining on his current contract. So it's like you talk about recruiting. A, you have to win to get recruits, but B, you also have to show that, like, hey, I got a long enough contract where I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
Like, you walk into schools and you've only got 2 years on that contract. They're going to be like, hey, man, like, I don't know how long that guy's going to be there. So
yeah,
it's so many moving parts. And again, I think the Hokies are in a good spot as far as being set up for success. They've got the resources. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. Things you couldn't really say when Justin Fuente was the head coach. But will it be enough? And Mike, the craziest part of this all, you upgraded the coordinators, but there is a very good chance that these margins, these slim margins the Hokies will face this season, come down to how good of a coach Brent Pry is or not.
Yeah. How much of this is game management? When we talked about strength and conditioning earlier, how much of this is game management versus strength and conditioning? We're going to get our answer because you changed the strength and conditioning coach. Like you made that change, right? So we're going to find out pretty quickly. Let's go through the schedule here real quick before we get out of here. South Carolina in the opener. That's brutal. I mean, that's a really tough start. I see the fan base already trying to talk themselves into this, and how Lenora Sellers, like, he can't really be that good. And the only thing I can tell you is that as somebody who watched a lot of Lenora Sellers last year, guys, he is good. He's really good. And South Carolina is really good. And like, yeah, they're replacing a lot of people. Like Dylan Stewart's back, but they're replacing a lot up front, in their front 7 on defense. They're replacing a lot of guys, but Shane is also like recruiting good SEC players out of high school, and he's doing well in the portal, and they got a difference maker at quarterback. That is not going to be an easy game, obviously, out of the gate. Vanderbilt at home. If you want a temperature of the fan base, David, let's play this out a little bit just for a second. You want a temperature of the fan base? Virginia Tech's probably going to be, I haven't looked at the spread recently. Virginia Tech's probably a 2-score underdog against South Carolina. And then you got Vanderbilt in week 2 at home, a team that you lost to last year to really start a season that was extremely mediocre. And now you get them at home. And we know that Vanderbilt this year isn't going to be sneaking up on anybody. They are happy to be a mediocre SEC team. That's a far cry from what they once were. Everybody thought that was a walkover game last year. Virginia Tech goes into Nashville and loses. If Virginia Tech starts 0-2, buddy,
and Virginia Tech has not left I believe Virginia Tech under Pry has not left September with a winning record. And this is a weird.
I don't like that stat.
This is because Labor Day's at the end of August, Tech plays on August 31st. You play a 4th game September 27th, or your 5th game September 27th. So Tech's gonna have 5 games before the end of September. There's a chance Tech is 2-3 with wins over Old Dominion and Wofford.
Yeah. Pack your bags. I mean, that's not the scenario you want, especially with the questions with NC. That means that they've lost to NC State. And David, like, there are questions with NC State this year. Like, a lot of people are wondering what they're going to be too. And if you're going to lose a 50-50 game, I mean, it's not easy to go to Carter Finley. It's a tough place to play, but you cannot start 0-2, lose to 2 SEC schools, right? Have wins against Old Dominion and Wofford, and then go into a 50-50 game on the road at NC State and lose. You can't do it. I mean, Virginia Tech, I could also envision a scenario. I mean, you just talked about kind of the 2-3 scenario. I can also see a scenario where Virginia Tech is 4-2 heading into the Wake Forest game, right? Where they lost the 2 opening games and then kind of ran the table up until Georgia Tech. That Georgia Tech game could become pretty important in the middle of October.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Georgia Tech, I don't think Georgia Tech's sneaking up on anybody either.
No, they're good. They're
I mean,
good.
dude, Haynes King, Tech lucked out last year because Virginia Tech lucked out last year because Haynes King was not healthy when
Right.
Georgia Tech came to Blacksburg.
Right.
Kyron Drones was also not healthy. That could be a very intriguing duel. Jamal Haynes, that's a tough one. Yeah, it all comes back to how you start. Like Mike, people will ask us over these next couple of weeks once we get closer to the opener. Hey, what games are you looking out for? What's your most important game on the schedule? For me, it's Vanderbilt, and there's no other answer. This is the team that ruined your season last year. Week 1, that embarrassed you. You went to Nashville thinking you were all high and mighty, led with less than 2 minutes to go, and lost the game in overtime because so many things went wrong. And you have the opportunity in your home stadium under the lights to redeem yourself. And if you lose that game, because I think Tech can keep it close with South Carolina for a little bit, but I'm chalking that one up as a loss. That, as you said, will tell you everything you need to know about this team and this fan base, because I thought the Hokies in a lot of ways underestimated, both from a schematic standpoint, but also from a mentality standpoint, Vanderbilt.
Yep.
You can't do that this year, and I'm sure they won't do that this year.
Right.
But I could if Virginia Tech loses that South Carolina game and then comes out and beats Vanderbilt, I think that tells you everything you need to know about this team. That this team can get right and win games, but like it's not an easy start. You're talking about a team that beat Alabama last year in Vanderbilt. Obviously, much different team, but I think it's an okay start to the ACC play. NC State and Wake,
right?
Could be worse, but it'll be. I mean, Tech has to take care of business. Wins against Old Dominion and Wofford aren't going to do anything.
Right.
I think you have to have 3 wins coming out of non-conference play to feel good about the season. I don't care if it's South Carolina or Vanderbilt, but I tell you this, it'd be a hilariously Virginia Tech thing to beat South Carolina and then lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's like the Ohio State, East Carolina turnaround. That's
but
senior year.
But keep this in mind. I'm sure you can answer this. The last time Virginia Tech beat a non-conference Power 4 opponent was?
Oh, yeah, it's been a while. 16?
17. West Virginia.
It's been a while. Yeah.
In the season opener.
That's right. Yeah, at
FedEx Field.
Yep. I was there too.
It's been 8 years. Virginia and Virginia Tech played Rutgers twice and Purdue at home and Vanderbilt. Those are just in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Like, you got to win, man. And that's why that Vanderbilt game is so pivotal, because it's regardless of what happens week 1, there's going to be film out on you week 2, and you have an opportunity to say, this is who we are. We're in our own stadium. We're going to take it to them. And guess what? Vanderbilt wants it. Like Vanderbilt's ready.
Yeah, Papia wants all the smoke, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure who made Pavia's got Pavia all fired up about the Brent Bry comparing him to Trace McSorley last year. But Pavia turned that into, they're calling me a poor man Trace McSorley. Yeah. Like, okay, do whatever you need to do to get fired up for that game, man.
Right.
But yeah, that October, that October, man, like Georgia Tech, you only got 3 games in October, just the way the schedule falls. And you got Georgia Tech on the road. And then November gets hot.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about November real quick, and we'll get some predictions. Georgia Tech's going to be like a bellwether game, middle of the schedule. Tech gets Cal at home. The closing stretch is just brutal. Louisville's going to be good. At least you get them at Blacksburg. You travel to Florida State, which I don't really know what Florida State's going to be. I think better than last year is a fair assumption, but I don't know. Miami probably will be pretty good at Virginia. Virginia is going to be better, I think, by virtue of schedule alone. They're going to be better. Obviously, the first three there are tough. I mean, I'm not going to pick Virginia to beat Virginia Tech until it happens more than, like twice in my lifetime or whatever it is, 3 times in my lifetime. But that Louisville, Florida State, Miami stretch is like, you can lose all 3. You can go 1-2. Cards fall right. Maybe Miami's not as good as people think. And maybe that's a winnable game. I think what favors Virginia Tech there is you do get 2 of those 3 at home, but man, what a brutal stretch in November.
Absolutely. Well, and who knows what injuries are going to look like at that point. Like Kyron Jones and Bashal Tootin were both hurt at that point last year.
Yeah. Mid-October, they were October they were banged up. I mean, that was...
Yes. But Clemson came to town last year, and somehow Virginia Tech was leading that game at halftime, and Drones was hurt and Tootin was hurt.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen in these things. I think that Louisville, I think, is the toughest of those. Yeah, I don't buy Florida State and I don't buy Miami, but Florida State's on the road. Miami's the one where I'm like, it depends on how cold it is.
Yeah.
We don't know that Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck's good, but it's Miami. Who knows how Miami's season is going to that point?
Right. How motivated are they?
It's certainly not an easy part of the schedule.
Yeah. Okay. With all that said, I went in. So I had a conversation with Joey a couple weeks ago. We did a win totals pod, David.
Okay.
I think Virginia Tech was at like 6.5, and I said under, and I said 5-7, and then I thought a little bit more about it, and I think this team is going to be better. I don't know if that's going to show up in the win column though. Like, I don't know if this is going to, I don't think this is going to end in 8-4. Like, would I be surprised a little? Would I be shocked? No, because there's so many question marks, coaching staff, players, personnel, a lot of questions. I don't know. I just need to see it with this staff. I have to see it. I know it's a new look staff, but I need to see it from Pry. I need to see the game management in 1-score games. I need to see like the comfort level just of the overall operation of a game as a head coach. I need to see that improve to be comfortable thinking that they're going to make this like vast improvement. I am with you that I think the coaching staff hires, I think the coaching staff's better. Like, I think you're better at offensive line. I think you're better at defensive coordinator. I know you're better at OC with Montgomery just by sheer experience. And I think they're going to be better strength and conditioning wise. I don't know if Pry's going to be better as a game management coach. I don't know the answer to that. That's the one I really don't know. And will it help having better guys around him? Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, like, why didn't he do some of this stuff sooner? It's the same stuff we were asking about Fuente late in the tenure. It was like, what, you brought in Jerry Kill. It was like, why didn't you do stuff like this sooner? It's kind of like the same questions I'm asking again, with just a different coach. I think I'm going 6-6, David. I think stamping it 6-6. I think that's where I'm going. It's a very safe and boring pick. I think Tech goes to a bowl game. I don't know if that's enough for Pry to keep his job. The start scares me. I think if Virginia Tech goes 1-1 there, I think it really sets up for Tech to have a good rest of the month of September. And then, you beat Wake Forest. That Georgia Tech game becomes gigantic on the road the second week of October. But I could also see a scenario where Virginia Tech starts 0-2. That NC State game's a little shaky. Georgia Tech, you're probably an underdog anyway. That Louisville, Florida State, Miami stretch looms. 6-6, I think, is a safe pick. I would have a really hard time seeing this team missing a bowl game. the schedule's tougher than last year, but I think the team's better too, and I think the coaching staff's better. If it's going to be better than 6-6, it's going to be because the coaching improved from Pry in particular. That's kind of what I'm hanging my hat on.
Yeah, so funny enough, when we were down in Charlotte at AC Football Kickoff, one of the things I did to predict my preseason order finish when I cast my ACC ballot is I went through every single team's schedule and basically picked win, loss, win, loss. I had Tech going 4-4 in the ACC, which is all right. And so it really depends on, do you go 2-2 or 3-1 in the non-conference?
Right. Yeah.
It's hard. I'm basically between 6-6 and 7-5 for this Virginia Tech team. I think Vanderbilt's the most important game on the schedule. And of the ACC games, I think NC State on the road is very important because it's the tone setter. And it's regardless of what happens in the first 2 weeks of the season, right? You got these two big games, and then you got this little bit of a lull where you've got ODU and Wofford, and it's like, okay, say Virginia Tech's 2-2 at that point. But that NC State game is the opportunity to basically rewrite the script of how you want the season to go.
Yeah.
Last time the Hokies were in Raleigh, they were winning and blew the game. That's familiar. Last time the Hokies played Miami, they were winning and blew the game and probably should have won in the end.
Yep.
Right. You can kind of go down the list and nitpick. I mean, Tech beat Wake recently, hasn't played Cal, but beat Georgia Tech last year, albeit with an injured Haynes King. And who knows, Florida State's coming off a 2-10 season, right? So there's opportunity here. The way I predicted it was this. I had NC State loss, Wake Forest win, Georgia Tech loss, Cal win. I had Louisville and Florida State losses, and then Miami and Virginia wins. So I had Tech at 5-5 going into the final 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
And that's why it's going to be such a week. I think it's going to be such a week by week thing.
Yeah.
I genuinely do. And man, if you're on Twitter, try to stay off of it as much as you can, because that place is going to be a cesspool.
I'm much happier when I'm not on it, I will say. I'm much happier.
Yeah, if only I didn't have to be on it for work.
Yes, same. Yeah.
Same. Yeah. There's so many different ways this can go, and Tech start is crucial. And I mentioned the NC State game. I think that Miami game, that is a revenge game from everything that happened last year. You get the Canes at home. I think Cam Ward was probably the player of the game last year.
Unreal in the second half. So
but
good.
I thought as a team, Virginia Tech outplayed Miami.
Yep.
And just you do one or two coaching things differently, you win the game. And I think that's the big difference maker. Like you said, if Tech wins 7 games, I could see the strength and conditioning and the coaching tipping the scale that direction.
Yeah. I agree. I think anything better than 6-6 is going to be like, all right, there was a noticeable improvement in coaching, because this schedule is harder than it was last year. South Carolina wasn't on the schedule last year. Now you got South Carolina, Louisville, Florida State in a must-win year for Norvell after what happened last year and the pressure there. Miami's always on the schedule. They're always on the schedule. And I don't know. Important year.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm going back and I'm just looking at last year's schedule, man. I'm just like, I cannot. I mean, it is amazing to me that team was 5-3 at one point.
Yeah,
5-3 after Georgia Tech, and then went 1-4 in its last 5 games, including the bowl.
Yeah,
and there were injuries there. Don't get me wrong, with Jerome specifically, but even some of these things where, and this is what I was talking about earlier. To be quick, with the game plan stuff, like the previous coordinators, sometimes they either hit on the nail on the head or they just completely whiffed.
Yep.
Like Virginia Tech was leading Clemson at halftime last year.
Yeah.
Bashal Tutin was hurt. Did not give a single carry to a running back outside of Bashal Tutin in that game. Clemson had its worst rush defense in like 30 years.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's because I can't see the same mistake happening twice.
Yep.
But I can't see this staff with the experience and maybe better wisdom. I just think they're smarter. And in theory, that translates to better success. But as you said, the schedule is more difficult.
We'll see. 6-6. Gut feeling. Just real quick. Gut check time. 6-6. Just probably keep his job. You can cop out and just say it depends on how it looks, I guess. But
are you saying so? 6-6 does. You're assuming probably beats UVA.
Yeah. 6-6 probably beats UVA.
What happens in the first 2 weeks of the year? They go 0-2.
They go 0-2. Because I think that's the most likely scenario. Like, truthfully, I think that's the most likely scenario for like the 6-6 to play out is they go 0-2 and kind of beat some bad competition.
Oh man, I think it's super difficult. Gut feel. You're putting me on the spot here. It's so complicated. This is why, for anybody who's not a Virginia Tech fan and does not keep up with Virginia Tech and who's been listening to Mike and I talk for an hour about Virginia Tech, Virginia over the last like 15 years, there's not been a single team in the country that has had more 6-6 seasons than Virginia Tech football. And I bring that up just to say that I feel like it is a little bit become conditioned for Virginia Tech fans. Like, oh, 6-6, beat Virginia to go to a bowl game. And it's one of these seasons where I don't know how many more opportunities for that you'll get. You know what they need? They need a 2019-esque season where you're coming off a bad 2018 and things just turned around. What you can't have is losing to Virginia and you can't have a coach flirting with Baylor in the offseason. And then a pandemic. But my point is that I don't know. 6-6. I think Pry keeps his job probably, but people are not going to be happy. People aren't happy now, and that's the tough part. The bottom line is Virginia Tech needs to do better than that.
Yeah, this is kind of what the program's been too. So it's just, can you were hired to not be like the last few years of Fuente. That's what you were hired to do. You were hired to just improve upon that and not be the 6-win team. I mean, Fuente took the team to bowl games, right? That wasn't the problem. It was, can you elevate the program to what it was under Frank? That's what you were hired to do. So it's like, you're to the point now, you're 4 years in and you're like scraping by to get to bowl eligibility in 3 out of the 4 years. I mean, that's tough. So
having just the continual having to beat Virginia to go to a bowl game, it gets old after a while. It's an old shtick that Virginia Tech fans are tired of.
Yeah.
Now nobody's ever gonna be disappointed beating Virginia. I can tell you that much. Nobody in Blacksburg, at least. But I mean, when the athletic department, when this program are set up to succeed financially, Pry has done everything right in terms of culture for the most part. I mean, there were some things last year, but it's like you've got everybody pulling in the right direction, as I mentioned earlier. You got to win now. If you don't win now, it's a missed opportunity. I really do feel good about 7-5. And I think Tech will catch some teams by surprise, and I think you will see a more of a team this year than you did last year.
Just be more competitive, please. Just don't just be an annoying watch. Like, this team's been an annoying watch for a few years. I just want like a few more games where I'm like, all right, they played win or lose. It's like, they played well. I can look forward to watching next week instead of like, oh God, they scraped by and won. But that was like a pain in the ass. I just want a
fun team.
A fun team. Just
fun. Is it too much to ask for fun?
Which I think they can be with all the new faces. So, all right, I'm going 6-6. You're going 7-5. I have a feeling Joey is probably going to say 5-7 or 6-6 because that's kind of where we always fall. Which fine with me. I said 5-7 2 weeks ago. I've already improved by 1 win. Here we go. We're going to a bowl game, baby. David, thanks for joining us as always. Really appreciate having you on. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah. First of all, any bowl game except for Charlotte and except for Annapolis, I will not be going back to either of those locations for a while. Yeah. I am tired of those places. I go to Charlotte enough, and Virginia Tech has been to Annapolis 3 times in like the last 11 years. I think we're okay. I'm at TechSide. We're at TechSideline.com. If you want to know everything about Virginia Tech, that's the place to be. TechSideline.com. You can use promo code David for a discount if you'd like. We've got you covered on everything. You know what I am very excited about? I know this is a football podcast, but I'm very excited about Virginia Tech men's basketball.
I am
very, very excited.
Much more optimistic.
But that's another story. But yeah, TechSideline.com. We got you covered on football, basketball. I'm on Twitter at @TheRealDeacon. I drop my handle right there on the screen. But yeah, Mike, I'm hopeful that we get something good to talk about this year. I just want it to be entertaining, man. I just want there to be storylines. There were certainly storylines at some points last year, but fun. Let's hope for fun.
I'm hoping for fun and a good team, because if a good team shows up, we can have you on in the middle of the season to preview like a big game, and that would be fun. We can go through the whole ACC slate. We can pick games against the spread.
I think I know somebody who would love to preview a Virginia Tech Georgia Tech game that means something.
That's right. Both of us. We make the joke about the Tecmo Bowl. It's usually both of our teams are bad, so we're hoping that both teams are good this year.
Oh, that'd be great.
We can preview a really important game in October. David, really appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you having me on as always, and talk to you guys soon. Thanks everybody for listening.
All right, we'll be back. Season previews will roll on. I don't know who we're previewing next. We got a few lined up. I know Pitt's coming, Florida State's coming down the pike as well. So we'll have those 2 previews out soon. This one will likely be posted first. So stay tuned. Please subscribe to youtube.com/@the ACC Football Podcast. Please subscribe. Really helps us out. And stay tuned for more ACC previews as we inch closer and closer to week 1. But until next time, go Hokies and go ACC.